And
Hello.
all of you all. It's so wonderful to see all of your faces. Welcome, and thank you so much for joining us for this Grow Local Fashion Forum. As you know from our conversation, Grow Local is a part of Carib Shopper, which is launching very soon, an online marketplace that will be selling and promoting Caribbean goods. So Grow Local is the developmental and resource arm that will be really assisting merchants and MSMEs to grow their product line and expand their reach and reach bigger markets and, just assist MSMEs and companies across the region overall. So in this panel, we really wanted to, invite all of your comments and your expertise around the Caribbean fashion industry and the fashion industry as a whole. We have an incredible group of us here today to have this conversation. I really can't thank you enough for joining us. So I just wanted to start off by having everyone introduce themselves, and maybe Mei, who is like my mother, my second mother, and my mentor of the last 12 years. Mei, if you can introduce yourself. I know most people will know who you are, but a little bit about you would be a great start.
Well, I've been working in this design world of fashion for many, many years, over 40 years. I have my own studio, I have my own label with a small shop attached to where I manufacture. My name is Mei and my label is Mei, and I try to produce as sustainability. And the whole buzz now is about sustainability, and this is what I aim to do. I've been doing it in a small way, but it's such a wide scope, and I'm learning more and more about it, and I'm happy to be at the panel and also to reunite with Tanika and Lois, who are two heavyweights on this panel, as well as you, Anya.
And just before we go on call, this is like a mini reunion from all of us all over the world, but for some of us, we haven't seen each other for a very long time. So that brings me to Tanika, who is Celie Thompson, ambassador to Brazil for Barbados. And Tanika has a background in many things, but the reason why we really thought your expertise would be incredible is because of partly one of your past roles in specifically at Caribbean Export. So if you'd like to give us a little bit of an update as to what you're doing now and what you bring to this conversation today about fashion in the Caribbean.
Anya, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm sitting here, smiling out at a screen, feeling because it's so nice to see you, and of course to be a part of this discussion with Mei Ling and Lois. And when I would have had the chance to meet these amazing women, I would have been working with Caribbean Export at the time. And at the time we were, even though it wasn't considered an emergency, I think one of the similar things about what we're seeing now, where we are now, is that at the time we were grappling with ideas like, what do we do? What new things do we do? So to reorient the Caribbean region towards greater paths of competitiveness and sustainability. And that's what I was really grappling with. So of course the creative industries became one of the priority areas that we were looking to develop for the future. And as we find ourselves in this moment where we're thinking about the future, I just feel so, I feel it's a good sign to see us regrouping like this and in these types of formations. And, in this role now, I get to draw on every day all of the lessons and the benefits of having had that regional view and having been able to be moved by some of the tremendous visioning that I saw in the conversations. Sorry, background noise. The conversations that I was able to be a part of during that time of my life, and literally every day that I'm in this role, there's something about having worked with those questions that makes sense or helps me to make sense of today. And that's what I start by saying. And hello to all the people logged in, and thank you again for giving us this chance.
Thank you so much for being with us, and all the way from Brazil as well. Who is currently in Los Angeles, correct?
Yes.
Of Jamaican descent, and oh gosh, I can't even begin the number of incredible things that you have done over the many years. Model, designer, author, artist, mother, correct?
Yes, mother, 8-year-old, almost a man.
The biggest role of all. If you'd like to share a little bit with us about where you are now, what you are working on, and how you just in terms of your positioning in this conversation.
Of course. So I'm Loy Samuels. I'm from Jamaica. And I got into the fashion industry almost 30 years ago. And I started as a model. 10 years ago, I started my collection called The Vessel. And that was based in New York. And from there, I did presentations in the Caribbean, in Africa, and in New York. And now I'm sort of reassessing my company. And I just made a transition from the East Coast to the West. So the plan is to relaunch the company again later on this year. And in regards to modeling, that industry, everything is changing. Fashion on all aspects are changing. So I'm happy that we're here together today to discuss the new norm that's coming after this pandemic. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And I know you and Milling have shown together, right? You've shown
several times. I admire Milling, admire aesthetic.
Future fan club here.
Yeah.
Well, touching on what you just mentioned, Loy, about the rapidly changing industry across the entire world, and in many ways we saw some of this coming, but I think that COVID has obviously fast-forwarded a lot of the disruption that's happening in many areas, like you mentioned. But I'd like to just start with a conversation about something Milling mentioned about sustainability in the industry, and some of the conversations that Milling and I have had catching up over the last few weeks have to do with this movement around slow fashion and how we as Caribbean designers, just by virtue of what we have access to in terms of production, in terms of material sourcing, we already practice slow fashion to some degree. And so I did want to ask everyone, but let's just start with Milling, what your feelings are about sustainability in the industry on several levels, and how do we as Caribbean practitioners in this industry, whether we're practicing in the region or outside of the region, really amplify the aspects of how we work that we already do, that are actually very fitting for this COVID period and what happens after COVID.
Well, and yes, we've been speaking, actually, this word sustainability has been the buzzword and has been heard, I would say, more and more in the last 2 years. And so much so that I spent this time to take some of this time being at home and doing a course, which I told you, on sustainability. And it's a vast, what should I say? It's very vast. Sustainability is nothing that we think. I mean, it impacts on not only nature, but also on humanity. So it impacts nature on the fabrics we use, and humanity on the modern slave day, where you have women in India working for absolutely nothing, being when their factories collapse. And it actually, the first day, my first day of the course, I came away thinking, my God, I belong to an industry that is responsible for global warming in a big, big way. We are destroying the planet. And also then you hear about modern day slave labor. I mean, to get the supply chain is a lot we will have to do, but we have to try and do as much as we can to produce in a sustainable way. For us, as I've said many, many times, and even more recently, that we have been doing slow fashion for a long time, meaning that we are not overproducing because we don't have the ability to overproduce. We have to consider the fabrics we use because, the cotton, some cotton fields, so the toxins that go into the material from dyeing, all these are part of the destruction of our planet. But I would really like to say that now is the time for the Caribbean to come together and show the world that we have been doing slow fashion for a long time. And maybe we can, with more knowledge or being able to produce more when it comes to fabrics and so in a sustainable way, we can now be the model for the rest of the world. We should come together with one voice I don't think it's Trinidad or Jamaica or Barbados. We have to come together with one Caribbean voice, and hopefully the rest of the world will look at us. I think, but it's not only just saying that we produce slow fashion. We, the designers, have to step up if we want the world to look at us. We have to step up in quality. We have to step up in pricing. We have to be more conscious of the fabrics we use. But I think that now is a very, very important time for the Caribbean creatives to take this, the battle of slow fashion that we are running with, and really develop it and make it something that the world looks at us. The world is looking at Africa fashion. Africa, whether they're doing it in a sustainable way or not, they have a voice. It's time for us to have a voice, and I feel for us to have a voice, as Tanika knows, we have been trying to do this for so long, have a Caribbean voice. And Lois, although you don't live with us in the Caribbean, you are.
Yeah, I am, and I feel I am a part of it. I'm a child of the Caribbean. But I also feel, following up on what you're saying, Mei-Ling, that this pandemic will have some sort of impact on the consciousness on every consumer, whether or not they were aware of, what was happening in the environment before. And I feel as a collective, they're just going to be more mindful of the process that goes into making everything, and the value that they place on things. For example, instead of saying, "Oh, what do I want?" or "What do I need?" like what do I really want? And to invest in pieces that have longevity. One, things that can be are more transitional, that can transform, things that that just last a longer time, at the same time just being conscious of the process that goes into it.
I think too, Lois, that it's before we go on to Tanika, let me just say this, that I feel that in the consumers now, they in a way the shoe's going to be on the other foot. It's not we telling you what you want or what you have to get.
What you need.
More emotional way in which we sell. We have to be very strategic. We have to be. It's going to be emotional. It's going to be social. They're going to tell us what we wear, what they want, and we have to step up to that.
Yeah.
Although I would love people to buy hundreds of my shirts, I prefer if they buy with a conscience.
Yeah.
This is going to last me for how many years? Can I pass it on to my daughter rather than just buy? And I feel hopefully this is going to come out of this time.
Yeah, because there's just been so much excess over the years. Mass production. It's just like sometimes I'm like, why do we need that much anyway? And what I'm seeing is a lot of people recycling now. And if it's using old pieces to make new things or just mending, that has become a trend over the past few months, even before COVID came in. So I believe slowly people are becoming just a little bit more conscious. And in that sense, what you're saying, Mei-Ling, we have to be so strategic and plan things in different ways so everyone's benefiting from what we're creating.
I think you've both touched on so many points that, for instance, one of the statistics is that 60% of the average person's wardrobe isn't used, which means, to your point, Lloyd, that, things like adjustments, things like upcycling, all of that, I think are going to become more and more common ways of making sure that you make the most of what you already have.
Yeah.
But there is something about the way you both create clothes that already is extremely sustainable from the standpoint that you pay so much attention to the longevity of the items that you provide people with. Mei-Ling has, my mother's wedding dress is still wearable today, and people come back to her on a constant basis with items that the children have inherited and they've had for 30 years. And, I just think that my real sense is that this is a time for Caribbean fashion designers to really value what we already do and to place emphasis on how we are prepared for the new world, how we are prepared for the consciousness, as you mentioned, Lloyd. And I think one of the things Tanika and I spoke about that I'm very interested to hear from you, Tanika, on is how do we actively shorten the supply chain? How do we access more and more of the raw materials from where we already live? How do we produce closer to home or even at home? How do we also do that in a way that keeps the price points of what we make as competitive as possible? But I think that was something that we touched on in our conversation last week. And if you might share a little bit more about that, it would be great.
Yeah, thank you so much, and I'm happy that you went back to that, because it's so nice that even without being in direct conversation with Mei Ling and Loy, like they're echoes of straight off the bat. I knew we would get to this sustainability question, and before coming into this, Anya, today I was in a conversation with my fellow heads of diplomatic missions, sort of like sitting down dressed like this, and really with my mind on what we were going to talk about, because I think sometimes fashion or the creative sectors in general, they have a way of, even in our own minds as consumers and lovers of it, even when we think of it as privilege, there's such a way that it is often removed from the realities of everyday life and suffering and workers and all of that. When we look into sustainable supply chains, we do discover that, but that's not a part of the consciousness that that I think Loy is speaking to, that is coming. And I hope that that's one of the things that comes. The reason I say that is because, or I mention those things, is because, as you listen to experts like the head of a central bank talk, and I'm just fortunate that Barbados and the Caribbean, one of the things we do have are people who are good policymakers and, people who are tremendously well educated. When you listen to that, one of the things I'm reminded of, and that we struggled with when, is not just short supply chains, but short collaboration chains, where there's a disconnect between what the policymakers have to think of and what the person in down the street who you might hire to sew now, because you have to do shorter distance, or you're making the decision to do shorter distance manufacturing, like what they have in common and how they're connected is one of the things that I hope this new consciousness brings about. And I think I like the point in which we started the discussion about sustainability, which is that, one, we have no choice. So a question is, this pandemic, and we talked about this, Anya, in every sphere, of my life as a professional, as an ambassador, as a friend, as a person in a family, like in all our lives, we're having to think about what really is the most important thing to do, like, and cut a lot of the fat, and the trends you mentioned, like upcycling, recycling, and those which come from that kind of consciousness also will have to ask themselves things like, well, what does my fashion product or my creative product have to do with the most pressing matter at hand? And if we take climate change, food security, energy security, health and wellness, that opens up and explodes all of this innovation that you are talking about, really, as the fashion experts and entrepreneurs. I'm not that, as much as I wish I were, I'm not that. I have the privilege and the honor of getting to listen to people like you and to play that back and to try to make connections among these different audiences. And in short, I think that we could talk about shorter supply chains, or fancy strategic language, which I would be happy to do, because sometimes it's really useful to look at case studies and to look at innovation models and all of this. But I think if we asked ourselves, what is one of the things in the Caribbean that we have struggled with, and to marry that with that question of what is the most important thing to do right now, there's no way that we are going to get around very simple things, but very heartfelt things, like how do we really value our own? We've been talking about this probably since we had economies to say we're our own. But how do we really value our own in a way that you're not waiting for any big brand, and this is just not to talk about any one brand, but brands that I may have yesterday bought without thinking, even as I have consciousness around sustainability. If I wanted to transfer that investment to, like, the lady in the, down the gap, as we would say in Barbados, because I know she's sewing for Anya now, and I know she's sewing for Loy, and I know she's sewing for Mei Ling. Like, what would it take for that to actually manifest in a way that, as a consumer, I get to feel good that those questions are not being answered. I'm not waiting for those questions to be answered by big corporations, but that somebody is sitting down going, this person in my central bank just said we're going to create this, and with the $600 that the government is giving, people are now being hired into, like, businesses that produce things for the local market, and technology that's imbued, and it comes from our ancestral technology, which is, you see this? I can put a zip in the side, and you do that. It's exactly the 70s, and now it's cute again. You know, so I'm saying a lot, Anya, but this is how we talk, and and that's how I'm thinking about questions of short supply chain. I try not to get too much like what that means if I can't connect it to what is happening right here, right now. And I think, as Lois saying, that's where we're at with our consciousness. If it's not about like right here, right now, or how it's going to make the world better, basically, I'm okay. So
I personally
don't have time for it.
Lloyd, were you saying something?
No, I wasn't. No, but I was thinking loud, so maybe you heard that. Tanika was saying about, you know, working together, and I think collaborations at the end of this pandemic is going to be what's essential to help everyone come together as a united front to put Caribbean fashion on the market. Because I do agree we're still not where we could be, because we have so much talent there. But I have tried to break into the Caribbean market, and it was not that easy. I mean, I feel like everywhere it's difficult, but I feel like the infrastructure still is not yet set up to help establish designers if you don't have your setup or up and coming designers. So that's something I think we need to really look into.
100%. And I mean, I think something I'm pulling from both of your comments is something Mei-Ling and I speak a lot about as well, is the building of an ecosystem, which requires collaboration, which requires an understanding that we all win together, not individually. One of the things that comes up a lot, and I'm sure you both see this, is that there's an affinity for people to want to be designer. There's not as much an affinity for people to want to be everything else that an industry requires. And so my question is, maybe Mei-Ling, you can speak to this as well, is you know, how do we encourage and highlight and enhance the awareness of what an ecosystem for our industry looks like, and really break down, to Tanika's point, like what is our version of being innovative about how we move forward. You know, we don't need to borrow practices from, I mean, of course we can borrow practices from people that are similar to us. You know, we look at a lot of what's happening in Africa fashion, and there are definitely similarities. Yeah. But I think we have to trust our existing sensibility of what we know how to do, that our ancestors have done, that you know, in reading Mei-Ling's bio, I was reminded of how much collaborative work you did and continue to do with Peter Minshall and many, many people. So I think maybe if you'd like to speak a little bit to that, Mei-Ling, of what that actually looks like.
Yeah, well, I think first I want to say we have to find solidarity with our peers. We have to come, I know that creative people are said to be divas and it's very hard, but collaboration, moving forward, the only thing that's going to help us is really collaboration, which I have been doing forever, and which I believe, and I think, remember, I think not only Trinidad, I think we had an island of dressmakers. We didn't have boutiques. My mother was a dressmaker. Every woman had a little woman that she would run to make a dress. And I think it's encouraging these people to come back. And I mean, we are such artisans, a lot of it coming from our carnival creativity. As you said, I've worked with Minshall and I've learned, although I've studied design, I've learned so much from him. And so much of what I've learned from him, I have applied to my work. So I think we as a group, Anya, maybe you or whatever the group, is to encourage these young people to come back and see how we can use craft, how we can use what we know, our creativity, small, and I tell the students all the time, form small groups, collaborate with each other. If you have gone to design school and you know how to make a pattern and the other one is good at marketing and one can make a design, you know, come together as groups and let's in small. We can't all try to compete with each other. I think the only way forward is collaboration, and also besides us collaborating and making the garments, teaching our consumers how these garments are made, knowing that the embroidery that I do all the time it's like I always think I'm imbuing every garment with a little bit of love. Nothing, I know everybody's onto social media and they want whatever Prada is doing and whatever this one is doing, but I think it has to come back home to us.
Yeah.
This pandemic has given us time to reflect, think about what we have as a people and what other people. Sometimes I feel that people outside other islands value what I do more than the Trinidadian. But I know it's the time, it's social media, everybody wants it's buy. So in a way, I always, yesterday I did one of these webinars now, and I said, you know, it's hurt my business tremendously, and my passion is about how I'm coming back, how I'm keeping these women who work with me for over 40 years, how I'm coming back and keeping that cash flow. But what I'm certain about is that I feel there's a silver lining.
Oh yeah,
I feel
definitely.
coming out of this, we will creep. We're not going to see it by the end of this year. Some people say 2020 is over, but I feel we're coming back with something that is going to be so strong, especially for us, the Caribbean. And if we work in it, but we have to work very hard. We have to come together with one voice.
That's wonderful. I agree. And you know, as you say that too, Mei-Ling, Tanika mentioned ancestors, but I also feel when collaborating, we have to find a way to weave a story within every, we have to weave
narrative. This is how we have to sell.
That's how we have to sell, because people love to hear that story and they connect to the design and the person, the creator, they connect more that way.
And if you think about it, every European, I can think of Kenzo as the first one. They've told our story and they don't really know our story.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. We have to tell our own story.
Yeah.
I mean,
Go ahead. No.
I was just going to say that focus on ancestrality also disrupts so many ideas. And what we can do with new technology now and the idea of ancestrality is really discover that, I mean, look at us. If we all did, you know, it's very trendy to do a DNA test. If we all did that, we would find out that there are authorities probably in everywhere from Mali to Java, right? And that's the Caribbean. And I'm passionate about the Caribbean. I'm passionate about Barbados. But I think one of the points that we miss, I speak to my Surinamese, Trinidad, Haiti, Jamaica. When I think about those countries and what they've done in the world, right? Yeah. That the stories we have are not so far, they're not beyond us, and they're new things. They're things beyond the beach.
Yeah.
And I think contrast fascinated. I mean, I'm a beach person, don't get me wrong, but there are things that are beyond that enduring story. And that's all I wanted to say for now. Yeah.
No, but you really touched on something that one of our audiences actually asked. This question is, do we really have a Caribbean fashion though? Isn't our fashion influenced by African, European, and North American influences? So I think if you could just touch on that, it's exactly what we're talking about.
Our motto is out of many one people in Jamaica. Out of many one people. So it's everything combined. I think we have influences from everywhere.
And our ancestors.
Yeah.
And I think also that I'm going to reference her because, and as a way of paying homage to her, one of the women that I can feel almost strongly here that joined the ancestral realm recently, who I can speak to with joy in my heart, and who was one of the first people that I knew that was taken by COVID-19, Jenny Polanco, was a designer from the Dominican Republic and a person, Jenny, right? So Jenny, as you know, Mei-Ling, I mean, it was sad, but Jenny was a person from a part of the Caribbean that you don't often get to engage with, from the Dominican Republic. I was living there at the time. And without having that historical contact, she saw a vision for all of these things and was one of the people who spoke it so clearly. And as she has passed into the ancestral realm, one of the reasons why I was so quick to be like, of course I will do this. Of course, we want to do this is that we can now have a conversation that we couldn't have had 10 years ago. You know, the last time we saw each other mailing was almost 10 years. I don't know if you realize, but even 20, you know, since then there's been China, there's been Singapore, you've been doing things. People have worked from, you know, all over the world and moved, but we can now have this conversation today in this forum with this clarity, where 10 years ago we felt like in order for there to be a way for us to discuss how to use our most sustainable product, we had to only meet in Jamaica every year. And that was the only thing we had going, right? We knew that video conferencing was possible, but it wasn't our preferred method. It wasn't where the funders were putting money. So I say those trigger points to say that in addition to reimagining and remembering what ancestors did and saw, there's a way in which the ancestors did and saw things that had nothing to do with the barriers that we have in our mind now. Like, oh no, what we're gonna do, we can't, like, they didn't have this, but this is perhaps a part of what they were able to do, which is to free themselves from this idea that you have to be on site physically in the flesh in order to have some kind of impact or in order to move people. So I feel like through Jenny, with like just very great reverence to her and reverence to where she was from. I mean, she was talking about things like, why are we all not sourcing the stones in Haiti? Why are we all not using that? You remember? Like, why are we all not saying, let's get a little piece of Sea Island cotton and then distribute it? You know, why are we all not doing those things? So, Megan.
So when I saw Lasia, and I'm so glad that I had 2 visits to the DR, and both times we always met. I was so happy because she was teaching the women in Haiti, and she was teaching at the schools in the DR and telling them about exactly what you're saying. So she was really something.
And in a way, I think to honor women like Jennifer and to ensure that we carry their legacy forward, one of the things I think, and maybe Laura, you can speak to this, is how do we merge what the sort of foresight that was already there with the technology that we now have access to? Is there something that we are already using now? For instance, e-commerce opportunities. You know, are there ways in which we can ensure that we don't forget what was already thought of? You know, the ideas that were already coming to the surface. How do we ensure that those ideas find life in this time, and how do we honor the legacy of women like Jennifer? And Loy, what I'm really interested to know is, with the vessel, how are you currently primarily doing e-commerce, or are you what's your general practice in terms of using technology to expand your business?
The social media platform was always and has always been very helpful to me. And it's not, initially it was about, you need to have a brick and mortar store, but that's no longer the way to do business, I think. And the retail stores aren't as powerful as they used to be because everyone's trying to cut out that middleman and go direct to consumer. So the social media platforms, having pop-up shops, and just, you know, reaching out one-on-one to clients has been my way of doing things. I am restructuring my company right now. So moving to the West Coast was about relaunching the collection later on this year and wanting to do more in the Caribbean as well. So I was really happy to come on board and talk on this panel too, because I'm interested to see how, as a group, we intend to move forward in the new normal after this pandemic, or for as long as this is here. Did that answer your question?
Absolutely. No. Okay. I'm muted, so I don't answer until yes, and we have another question. What comes into play is the scalability of the lady in the gap who you referenced, Tanika. How do we scale a business like hers? And as Caribbean and international consumers willing to pay for the value created through handcrafted, for example, lace, etc.
I mean, I think that's a really good question, actually. And I just wanted to say thank you to the person who sent that question in, and to use the opportunity to sort of thank also the host of this platform, which I know you did, Anya, but using that to center my thoughts. my mother sews, and I think about her. My mother sews, and she's been sewing for a designer who, in the 80s, for example, would have been very involved in these elaborate fashion shows. She's sewn wedding dresses. She's put together carnival costumes. And she also has sewn school uniforms for family. She's also sewn shirts for my dad and outfits for me to wear. And I think about my mother to honor her, but to also say that with respect to that question, the idea that the person in the gap, and I'm using that terminology to mean, an average woman who is in socioeconomic conditions that are just average for her station in life, etc., who doesn't want to go to an office to work, who is an artist and an artisan and values that as my mother does. They've not been able to compete with the brands that as I grew into an adult, for example, may have chosen when I was less conscious. And so I think it goes back to the question of a consciousness around labor as well, because I would have watched, and now I know that I would pay if somebody says, well, this thing costs this much because it was made in Tanzania and the buttons were brought from Bali. And, the women who produce this are also they have a coffee collective, just to wildly give an example there. But because I would have watched, and we all have, what it takes to put that button on, what it takes to put in the smocking or the brocade or the things that we've watched mothers do. And I think that there's a way, once this story is told and once we hold ourselves accountable to what we might do when we're international consumers, to value what our artisans bring to the product and not be afraid for that to meet with the kind of innovation that makes it durable, with the kind of innovation that allows you to make the supply chain transparent, with the kind of innovation that allows you, to tell the story of who this person or these people that have touched this product are. So I don't think that scalability is about the en masse question and numbers, but about a scalability again in the consciousness of the consumer that allows them to say, I understand that my money goes from my hand to the person who's distributing this, and X percentage is actually getting to this woman who is responsible for every stitch here, or who is responsible even for the idea of it. And I just want to wrap that up by saying that I think one of the things about our journeys, and I don't mean to speak for any of us, but certainly my journey is that you start to, and I'm in Brazil, I'm in Latin America, I'm moving around and meeting Afro-descendant people, indigenous people, European descendant people who are in all kinds of configurations of poverty and social class and welfare that are very different from the structuring ideas that constitute the Caribbean, right? Or the historical realities that constitute the Caribbean. And that as a disruptor, it changes the way I think aesthetically, the way I eat, the way that I dress. As an ambassador here, my job is to represent Barbados, but to also see in Brazil what there is that we have in common, right? The fact of we don't think Caribbean and Amazon, for example, we don't think the climate change issues that affect us as small island developing states have something to do with the burning of rainforests in Brazil, but obviously they do. But I think, how do we structure a new consciousness of being, an identity that will push out through our aesthetics and our consumption patterns? What if Loy were thinking of herself, whenever I look at her beautiful face, I'm thinking, I see a whole story here, because in Jamaica, there is Taino, there's Africa, there's the European, and we come out in Trinidad, we don't have to say that. And even if you are what somebody might say phenotypically pure African looking, that your hair is like mine and your dark skin. When I do my DNA test, just to bring it forward to the technology, I might decide, well, I'm adopting Mali because that's the aesthetic, and my aesthetic might change because of that consciousness. And what's going on in Mali? Is there water security, food issues? What do I care about? Do I want to now purchase things from Mali? Can I get down with that design because I am interested in the issues there? We know that resonance is resonance. If I like you, I'm interested in what you're interested in. If I feel familiar and that you're relatable, the product that you sell me is a product that I want to incorporate into my lifestyle. And to credit to you, Jenny and Lloyd, this question of a composite identity, an identity that's beyond, an identity that's full, and then gives itself to lifestyle products, things that
change. I think it takes so much time, but I feel our story, the Caribbean story, is so rich. It's so strong. Jamaica is just so special in my heart, like everything about it. But I feel, like there are all these other issues that are being addressed now. Self-love is one of them. Like back in the day, just looking the way I do wasn't necessarily the most acceptable look, because you should have processed hair, you should have this done or that done. And I feel like people are embracing much more their roots today. And so if there's a way to have the support system and to be able to share the story and collaboratively do so, we can make an impact not only in the world, but in the islands, in the Caribbean. Because I feel like we probably need to become so strong in what we're saying that we don't need to look out to get anything in. We're doing everything for ourselves: the clothing, the shoes, the hair product, everything. It's ours because we have it.
That's right. And we can encourage others to look in at us as we love who we are. We love the pure, the mix, the this. We love who we are. You're absolutely right, Lloyd.
So it's really it's all inner work, I think, from the start, and then it blossoms, and then you accept and you receive it. Then it goes in with nature, and it goes in with being more conscious, and it's everything. It's a story from within out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We have one more question here, which I think you're answering as you speak, but let's just focus on specifically this. How are you seeing the opportunity shift with consumers moving away from big brands and more into designer-based fashion?
I think, yeah.
Oh, go ahead. No, you go ahead.
No, I struggled a lot. Like as an upcoming designer, I've been in the business for 10 years. Mailing is a veteran, and established globally. But even when I started the business, it's always really trying. But I think in any industry there will be a struggle. The fashion industry, because it's so fickle, and because you have the big names, you have the couture designers, you have the name brands, you have the celebrity designers, you have all of that. You're competing with that. So how do we make it that people are supporting what we are doing? So it goes back to what I just said before. So we need to just come together, have a strong story, and present our product. It's trying, but we'll get there.
Mei-Ling?
What I want to say is that in the 90s in Trinidad, they had this big movement with everybody was, I think there were more designers emerging. So you had the Clark, you had first Chapter Adam, you had Heather Jones, and people were really, they were proud to wear these local labels. And then came social media, where everything was at the click of a switch, and you found there was Instagram, there was Facebook, and everybody started to aspire to these big brands that they saw the influencers wearing, and they didn't care whether it was a fake Armani or fake Prada. They still prefer to wear that than a local designer. Mm-hmm. It warms my heart because I think in the last year or 2 or 3 maybe, because I mentor so many young designers and even have some represented at my little shop here, I see these young designers. I mean, they're new at their trade, but I feel that they're growing tribes of their own. I see people like Shop Shari and Willow and Oak and Sunny. These are local designers and jewelers and garment makers, and I feel that this is a time, I feel that they're even going to work harder, and because they have social media to help them, and if they tell their story right and they keep at it and they produce good garments, I feel, again, Annie, I don't know if you agree with me, that each of these designers have their followers. They just have to work a little hard at growing it. And maybe now that this time people are going to stop and think about who they purchase. Hopefully, they're going to be those who are going to go back and buy the fast fashion and buy. But I feel that this is a time that we can actually pivot a bit or a little bit more. And these designers, if they can hold on, I know it's very difficult surviving this time, but if they can still keep working, hopefully, and posting whatever they do and telling their stories, that we can grow this awareness of what we are doing.
Mm-hmm. No, I totally agree. I mean, you know that we share this mission, you know, and I've inherited it from you to some degree of how do we ensure that there's a passing along of opportunity, that there's a sharing of space, that we, you know, after winning Project Runway, I knew that I couldn't sell everything that I was being asked to provide. I designed a very specific line. I had a very specific women's wear collection, and so it was important to me to see how do we bring all of us to the table to tell this collective story, because as Caribbean designers, we do have some things that we share, and I think that that's for me, I've learned from you, Mei Ling, to make sure that we hold each other's hands and move forward, and I think this storytelling aspect of that is key. And to the point of mentorship, we have a question from Simon Hoyt. I've always found interest in the fashion industry. However, it was difficult to find guidance, mentorship, and opportunities for collaboration. Do we have any advice?
Oh, call my office.
Exactly.
She should call my studio.
Exactly. Say that one more time.
I think you have to find out, and it may not be me. You may have a designer that you admire, and you just have to be brave. I get phone calls all the time. Can I intern? Can I meet? And on Saturday mornings, that's when I see young women who are interested in fashion. They just come and they tell me where they're at. I have to say though that one thing is important: education in the industry.
Yeah.
I think there's also a question. Sitting in the Caribbean expert position, everybody was coming or everybody was engaged because they needed something and there was a facility for it to be accessed, right? So that was that's an orientation that I had in my past. It's different now, which is that in this role, and you know, my colleagues have this possibility as well. Like we have such tremendous opportunities to expose and give exposure to products and services as ambassadors. I mean, the word is used more and more commonly to refer to people who are ambassadors for brands or ambassadors for products. But in this role, certainly one of the things that we all who have the honor and the responsibility of doing it can do is ask ourselves, how can we in our living, speaking, working, writing, eating, do more and align with what these new product development or product stories, what is that new consciousness around how we now position products? I mean, any product that or designer or performing artist that comes to me in Brazil, for example, in whatever format, it is assumed that is the best of Barbados. And indirectly, I get to, or directly get to say, because we have excellent things, the risk is low that I would not put the best of Barbados, but it is an endorsement. And how do we connect the fact that we have just by somebody appearing or a product appearing, being shown, there's a whole set of effects that can happen, and how do we harness that set of effects? And another thing is I'm thinking about the brave young woman who just managed to get herself connected to one of the most eminent designers in the Caribbean and the world, just by daring to say, so what happened with the mentorship? I think that kind of daring, like, you know, I want to hear designers saying, so why are you not wearing my clothes? Why are you not telling my story? Why are you not showing my art? And take the chance to ask, what can you demand is done for you by the people who really represent you? I do represent a government, but I represent a people, because that government is represented by people. So I think that, you know, again, I think going back to this idea of what kinds of shifts in relation, what kinds of shifts in accessibility, diplomacy is changing. We're not going to cocktail receptions anymore. How are we thinking, for example, of doing that in a new environment? So I think young designers could ask, like, where are the opportunities for study? Are there online? What's happening in Brazil? What's Sao Paulo Fashion Week like? Like in general, therefore, I'm saying that measure of engagement, there couldn't be a better time to do than now, because we're literally captive, and so many of the audiences, including who you want to do something for you, even as policymakers. And I don't know how my prime minister does it, but she is so wonderfully present and on the point with things that that I would encourage. And I know she's accessible, that it just sets a truth in play that says you don't have to see these distances among, these camps. You really want to close the distances among the camps, and realize that you are, you as a designer, you as an artist are the thing that ultimately is speaking for a country, whether you are called an ambassador or not, and maybe think through what that could mean as you collaborate with other ambassadorial elements in the world.
Well, I think I could speak for, at least I can speak for myself, that I definitely have some Made Mia Motley envy, and I wish we could adopt her somehow. But
she's remember that she is CARICOM. This is a real
no. 100%. We're so
regionalist, Sorry.
I feel like eventually, there needs to be some sort of concept. At one point, about 4 years ago in Europe, they started having all these concept stores, which I found really interesting, because even though we're interested in fashion and we're interested in the stories and all of that, I feel it needs to be more than that. Like the Caribbean offers so much. So yes, there's fashion, there's food, there's furniture, there's design, all aspects of, there's art, there's so many aspects of design. And I feel the platform, all these different platforms need to come together. And in this collaboration, it will be more impactful within the islands and globally.
I wanted to ask, now we have just a few more minutes left, and Milling, of course, you as well, because we both, practice a lot of this. But to Tanika's point, what I kind of brought from it was a sort of self-reliance, your ability to go out and grab what's there and be brave. And I think what we have at our fingertips with technology are many different ways in which, as an individual designer, entrepreneur, wherever you sit in this ecosystem, what are the tools you would say you currently use to build your business, to expand your reach, to reach your customers? What I know we touched a little bit on social media, but I'd like to just get a little bit more granular for the sake of anyone listening who is a young upstart designer, and what are some of the practical tools that you both use to do the business that you do now?
I think you have to have, I tell all the young designers that you may get an order from someone, but see beyond that order. So make sure that when you deliver, it's as perfect as it can be. And it's not just about the dollar value, it's about growing a relationship. So you should really have that personal communication, like what I've been doing even now, which may help you all. Although I'm not seeing my clients, there's some of those who are on Instagram or Facebook and they see what I'm posting every day. I pick up the phone and I call them, and it's a more human and more, what should I say, emotional and social connection with them, and say, how are you doing, and we'll see each other, you're okay, you're healthy. I think you have to grow. Besides just, first begin, you have to give service. I always say that. You're only as good as the service you give. So it could be the most beautiful garment. It's how you deliver it on time, in a timely manner, with a good price point is right. And then you grow that. And anyone can be, don't think beauty looking at the person who is wearing, has a Prada handbag, and you never know who is walking into your space, and you treat everyone the same.
Yeah.
And you connect with them in you find out if they like white shirts. When you do a new white shirt, you ring them and say, oh, I have some new things. So find out a little bit about them. It's I tell them, I know that I'm creative and I've been blessed by the creativity, but why I'm here after so many years is about the service that I insist that I give and my team who support me so wonderfully. You know, so I think it's really about service and communicating more than that dollar for the dress that you're getting.
To
You
give
have to take it a bit further.
To give an unforgettable experience, so they keep coming back.
And I think
Yeah.
I know now it's all about selling online.
Yeah.
I feel that now that if you have a space, it's about the experience. They come in and you stop and they want to know, well, who did the smocking on your dress, or how were the buttons made, and you tell your story right there, and you kind of hook them in. And I mean, I had this woman who brought a dress, a young woman, she must be in her 40s. Her mother wore the dress to her brother's wedding. She brought this dress back to me after 43 years. It was in mint condition, and I just redid it, and it was made it much more revealing and sexy, and so it was perfect. I mean, obviously it was great workmanship because it stood up for 43 years. But when she came, you know, we spent time, we had a cup of coffee, we spoke about when her mother bought it, she brought photographs, and now she's come right back. So this is, she's in her 40s, and she's come right back to me. So when I say I'm dressing fourth generation, she said, I always heard my mother speak about you, and when you come here, you know, your staff treat me as I'm the only woman walking in here for the week, and we dance attention of her. But this is what people want, and they're going to want it more. They're going to want it even more now.
Yeah.
Lloyd, do you agree?
I totally agree. And it's the relationship. It's everything Melling says. It's the relationship that keeps it going.
That's right.
And do you feel that, you know, under the circumstances where we may not be able to have as many in-person encounters, do you feel that technology affords us to maintain that type of service? Do you feel that, what are the tools you would say we could continue to use now that would not necessarily replace the in-person experience, but at least facilitate some measure of that service that you're talking about?
Absolutely. And I've been forced to be Zoom. I've been forced to be. I was the one who never even wanted a computer in my office.
Now you have to use it.
But you know, now I've been forced, and I use it all the time. And people can't be. They say, keep your Instagram page. Every morning at 6 o'clock, I post myself. I love Instagram, and that has been the tool. That's how I've been selling. That's how people have been finding me.
15 hours
from all over the world. So I think you can do it. You just have to keep in touch.
With the
appeal to them, find out what makes them tick, or what will touch their heart, and just play into it. But you have to be sincere about it. It can't be just, you know.
Because they become friends, right?
Yes.
Your clients become friends. It's a relationship. I agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think that the main thread that I've heard through this whole conversation, and it really is, it's so important to me personally, but it's amazing to share it with you all, is that we already have so much at our fingertips as creatives in this region, not just as fashion designers, across the entire gamut of creativity. We have it in terms of our interpersonal skills, we have it in terms of our storytelling, we have it in terms of our ancestral, what we can draw from. I mean, there's no story like ours. There's no story like our collective story, and there's no story like our individual stories. And when we really find the courage to say that is what we are selling, that is what we are sharing, that is what we are offering the world, and we don't need to borrow and copy from anywhere else to create that value. And then we now have the opportunity through e-commerce, through social media, through many different technological advancements to really get it out there. You know, it's a very exciting moment to me, and I am really so happy to hear everyone say that.
Yeah. And I'm looking forward to see how we grow from here, you know, like how we follow up from this conversation, and we create an infrastructure that will benefit all of us as creatives in the Caribbean. I'm really looking forward to what comes next, the new normal. Yeah.
And I hope the new normal is more conversations like this. You know, I hope it's not 10 years before we all have the opportunity to share, because clearly we are so much on the same page. And I think that designers especially need even more support from the non-creative industry practitioners, because we can't do this alone. So, you know, especially thank you so much for joining us in this conversation and validating so much of what we already believe, and I think strengthening the example that this is a truly collaborative moment, and with each other we can really be our biggest, most Caribbean selves in a world that will really enjoy, I think, what we have to offer. So, does anybody have anything that they'd like to share in our final moments?
Just thanks to you and our host, Anya. This has been amazing. We should do some more.
Yeah, thank you.
I think, Anya, I want to just add one thing to the young designers out here. You know, this time is very trying, but take this time. It has given us time to breathe, to rethink our model, to figure out what we really want to. And to the little woman the little dressmaker this side, or somebody, engage these people who do fabulous craft. This is where fashion is going. People want things that are beautiful. A special button or an embroidery or something. It may not be your style. There are people out there who crochet, this is a creative island. And even if you cross islands, that's fine. That's great.
Yeah, I think just one, Loy mentioned this, that so much of this work comes from within. And I think, Mei-Ling, the work you're doing in this time of actually doing a new entire course, really advancing your awareness of what you're capable of doing coming out of this, each of us in our own ways, I'm sure, taking the opportunity to be reflective, but also be proactive. And I do think that inner work is really where we will all reap the most benefit. So thank you very, very much. This is wonderful. I hope we can take it offline and do this soon.
Sounds good. Thank you. Thank you.
Everyone be well, and yes, I'm sure we'll speak again soon.
Good.
Tanika is great catching up.
Yeah, thank you.
Let's stay on the line or something. Let's be in touch.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.